another episode of Cam in Focus Weekly. I'm your host, Cam, and with me over here on that's my left, but right on the screen is Mr. Dave. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Tired, but good.
Well, I hear you. Well, I'm certainly glad that you're here. And down below us is Mr. Cody. How are you doing this evening?
I'm great.
Or this morning in Cody time.
Yeah. It's a good morning for me, for sure.
Well, if you guys missed last week's stream, Andrew and I got on and we talked about a nifty little film called Thank You for Smoking, starring Aaron Eckhart. We had a good time with that. Check it out if you haven't. Lots of laughs with that one. But today we're discussing something, another kind of forgotten movie that no one really talks about anymore. Disney's The Black Cauldron from 1985. Now, for those of you who don't know, The Black Cauldron is actually an adaptation, sort of a loose adaptation of actually the first two books of the Chronicles of PRYDAIN series written by Lloyd Alexander. If you don't know what that is, it's a high fantasy book series, very much along the lines of Lord of the Rings, very heavily influenced by Welsh mythology. Fantastic stuff. There's 5 books in the series. If you haven't read them, check them out. They're great. And this movie, I hate to draw this comparison because it's going to make me so mad. This movie, much like Artemis Fowl, decided to take the first 2 books of the series it was based on and kind of mishmash them together into a Frankenstein's monster of sorts. Now, me personally, I haven't seen this movie since I was like a little kid. I remembered almost nothing about it. And I certainly have a few things to say about it. Dave, had you ever watched this movie before?
Oh, I saw this movie back in the 80s when it first came out. I saw it on the theater.
Yeah?
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh, shut up. I'm old. Leave me alone. Yes. In fact, this was one of the ones. Okay, so this was one of those ones that they released in the 80s and then it like disappeared. And then when Disney had their renaissance back in 88, 89, that time frame, I guess was when the Little Mermaid kind of kicked things off. Even then, Disney being popular as it was, and they were releasing like a movie a year because you had Mermaid and then the Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, and it was like every year what's the new Disney movie, and they would always release those big clamshell VHS boxes, the Disney masterpiece boxes, and they even revisited. Oh, we're opening the vault and we're releasing Cinderella and we're releasing Pinocchio, but they never did this one. This one didn't come along until you
had to be part of the club and they would mail it to you.
Well, I think it was the late 90s that they finally released this on VHS.
Yeah, and it was remastered.
Yeah, and I was excited because I hadn't seen it they wouldn't even show it on the Disney Channel. So it was they kind of tucked it away. It's like Song of the South. If you haven't seen Song of the South, I would strongly recommend seeing Song of the South. If you could find a copy of it, go watch it. I think it's on YouTube.
It might be.
There's a poor copy, but it's one of the. It's a Disney classic. It just happens to take place in a rough part of American history. So, in order to avoid hurting feelings, we're not going to play it anymore. And it kind of disappeared, and now it's kind of sort of in the. I want to say kind of in the mainstream. It has a big cult following. If you've seen it, it's not a musical, so that was always really good. But yeah, I love it. It was frightening. It was terrifying. I think it was the first Disney movie to get a PG rating, and even then they had to cut it back a lot to keep it.
Sure, they did
from the newly found PG-13 rating. So,
how about you, Cody? Had you ever watched this movie before?
So yes, I have. But it's funny what Dave just said, because it was really terrifying. So like when I was little and this was on VHS, I never wanted to watch it. It was so scary to me. Like just even seeing the Horned King, was like scary to me. So when I rewatched it today, actually, I was like, why was this scary to me? Because now this is like the aesthetic of stuff I like. So it's
Yeah.
weird to think that like when I was a kid, I was like, no, I don't want to watch that. And also, when I tried to look up the VHSs, because I like to just look up stuff when we're talking about the movies, I had the original VHS that said the Black Cauldron on it. So if you try to buy it now, it's not even called the Black Cauldron. It's called Terran and the Magic Cauldron. So that's
What?
a little
What?
weird fun fact that I guess when
I
they
think I've got.
when they recased it, it was remarketed because I guess it was like a flop because so I only read a little bit about it, but basically it was released the same time as the Care Bear movie. So they
Yes.
fought each other the same weekend or the same week, and I guess the Care Bear movie like stomped them,
Well, it
grossing
was
way more money.
so what it was the Care Bear movie cost like $4 million to make, and then ended up making like $44 million that weekend,
Jeez.
and then or overall whatever. But then
Yeah.
that movie cost like 20 million to make, but only made like 20 million, so it was like,
Oh yeah, and that's a lot. That was the mid '80s, so that was a lot
Yeah.
of money for animation.
Yeah, that's like
Now
100 million by today's
you're used to
standards.
like hundreds of millions of dollars going
Yeah.
into a movie. But yeah, so that's the only thing. So I was trying to find a picture of the, and it's weird. I don't know. And also, why would you rename it? I don't know. I guess it probably had a lot to do with I never knew it was the retelling of Lloyd Alexander's books, but I guess it makes sense because when I was rewatching it, I was like, this seems really familiar, and I was thinking like maybe Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
But
so Lloyd Alexander's work was heavily inspired by Lord of the Rings, absolutely.
oh,
He pulled from a different realm of mythology, though. I forget exactly what was the main basis of Tolkien's lore, but the PRYDAIN Chronicles was like
Welsh.
heavy Welsh mythology. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and oh yeah, they're all great books. If you're into high fantasy, they're fantastic. The characters are super well written. The lore is really fleshed out. It's just great stuff. Now,
Oh no, I read some of the Chronicles of PRYDAIN, so that's
Yeah.
why I was like, oh, okay. I never finished it because just like the Narnia, it's just a lot of books.
Well, there's 5 that of the main series. I don't know if there were any offshoots or anything like that, but there were 5 of the main series. And so, and the thing about this movie is the fact that, you know, like I said, it kind of amalgamates different plot points from the first 2 books and makes almost like its own original story, which is weird to say for an adaptation. And like the Horn King, for example, the Horn King is the main antagonist of book 1, which is called the Book of 3.
Okay.
The Black Cauldron is the main MacGuffin of book 2, which is the Black Cauldron. The Horn King isn't even in book 2.
I think he was killed in book 1. If I
He was killed in book 1, absolutely. And
Right.
yeah, so that they have these, you know, very different plot threads, and you know, kind of push them together. Princess Eilonwy is another example. Taran finds her in the Horn King's castle. Well, in her first appearance in the Book of 3, Taran rescues her from what's called the Spiral Castle, which is ruled by a witch called Akren. So, you know, it's like they have these 2 books, and it's like, okay, well, let's just cherry pick this thing out of here and put it here, and we'll take this thing out of here and put it here, and we'll take this thing out of here and put it here. So as someone who had read the books, I'm watching this movie and I'm like, wow, this is nothing like the books. Well, I don't want to say nothing like the books, but not very much
like a
the
weird
books.
amalgamate of the books.
Yes.
It was,
well, that's the problem with high fantasy novels being film adapted, because like the early 30s was when he wrote was when Lord of the Rings was written.
Right.
So there were parts that obviously got crushed together for the cinematic, like what's the word I'm looking for? Just like to make it make more sense, because they obviously weren't writing for a film. They were writing because they were writing. So that's why you feel that way, because they were like, well, we're gonna make this together, and they never made it thinking like, oh, we're gonna make 4 more movies. They just were like, we're gonna use this story, full stop.
Yeah.
So they could have done that, but just like you said with the Artemis Fowl movie, they took the plot of one, then they were like, well, halfway through we're like, just kidding, we're gonna do something else completely, and then changed like core parts of the character. And I guess it was a success, but as someone who read the books, I was like, this is disgusting.
Yeah, disgusting is a good way to put it. I felt very icky watching that movie.
Yeah,
I think there was, I was reading somewhere that Lloyd Alexander actually watched this movie, and he said it's a very, very loose adaptation of my book, but it's a good story by itself.
Yeah.
So
now, and yeah, that's the thing. You know, if I had watched this just on its own, if it was completely isolated, if I had never even heard of the Chronicles of PRYDAIN book series, I'd probably have a better appreciation for this. But going in with the predisposition of this is an adaptation of a story that I love,
mm-hmm.
that kind of set me up for expectations that aren't met.
that's my opinion of the Lord of the Rings movies.
Huh?
Yeah.
No, I agree with him. I reread the Lord of the Rings after the first movie came out, and yeah, they crushed a lot of it together. So like the overarching story is pretty similar,
right?
But there's like characters that are gone. Like we don't see Tom Bombadil until the Amazon story that just came out, and then he was supposed to kind of
now some
make
of the
you
stuff,
feel the age of the world, and you don't meet him, so that's like a full storyline we don't ever see in Fellowship.
But some of it I get that was left out for artistic stuff, but I mean.
Mm-hmm.
The whole bit with and this was the one that always threw me, was the whole bit with Faramir where he caught Frodo and Sam and Smeagol, and basically he showed them what's going on, and then he says, I'm not going to make the same mistakes as my brother did. You guys are working on something. Go do your thing. I'm turning you loose back here. And in the movies, he was like, I got me a new weapon. Let's go down to Osgiliath and drag everybody down there. And I'm like, you just ruined an entire character arc. You made a good person bad.
Oh yeah,
just for the sake of, so you could get them to Osgiliath and show your bat thing. And that, again, one of the greatest lines in all of movie history was Sam when he was there. He goes, by all accounts, Mr. Frodo, we shouldn't even be here. And it's like, you're darn right, Sam. You shouldn't be here, because guess what? You are supposed to be here.
That's funny. I think that's definitely an overarching theme with film adaptations, especially like high fantasy and dark fantasy. And then a lot of times, I don't know. I feel like there's definitely more than just like, well, that's what they wanted to do. There's probably like storyboarding and stuff getting cut because they have a time allotted amount that they have to hit. And then also like what we were just saying in the earlier with the rating, because in the Black Cauldron, PG-13 hadn't existed yet. So, and on top of it, Disney probably would have died before letting a movie go out at that rating, because that's why their adult stuff was going through Touchstone still, because they were like, we don't want that name with Disney. So, but now they just don't really care. But back then that was kind of like racy. Like, shoot, even we kind of almost get an on-screen death with I'm kind of jumping ahead, but that was a big deal. So if I had been a kid in the theater, I probably would have been like, oh my God.
What, with Gurgi?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we did get an on-screen death with the Horn King, as the Cauldron sucking him in, like,
oh yeah, and that was morbid,
ripping flesh off his bones and tearing him apart,
yeah.
like, and we've talked about this a bit before, but back in the 80s, it was a very different time as far as what was considered okay for general viewing, because in 1984, I think you had Caddyshack 2. Terrible movie, by the way, but it's rated PG, and they drop an F-bomb in there like 3 times.
I like that movie.
But that's because PG-13 didn't exist yet, so PG had
Yeah.
a lot of the PG-13 rules, so they could say the F word 3 times, and that was it.
That's why we talked about Spaceballs on Cantina Happy Hour last week, and that one had an F-bomb in it, 1987, and that was rated PG.
Yeah, it's PG, which is so funny because the DVD version of it has a lot of it cut out. But then you can get the unrated version, which is just the original version. But I the thing about the 80s and I don't know, movies, it almost was like the dark fantasy renaissance, because we got like the Dark Crystal, the Black Cauldron, and a lot of the fantasy was like dark. Even like the Care Bear movie I mentioned earlier, there's like, it has that feeling of this is dark.
Yeah.
Both of the Care Bear movies 1 and 2 were kind of like,
yeah, and you're thinking like, really? Care Bears, like what the hell? And even like the Smurfs, the main villain is like openly admitting, I want to murder and eat you. Like,
yeah.
So it's all really dark kind of theming. So, but now we don't really, like, once in a while we get a really good dark fantasy movie, but it feels like that was really like the peak of dark fantasy, especially in animation, because we don't use the what was it called, the Technovision, where the cell is way in the background and then there's the front cell.
Oh yeah,
they don't film like that anymore. So I don't know, it just has that feel, like that, like not Snow White, the other one, Sleeping Beauty has that feel, like it just feels dark the whole time. It's just the way that the cells are animated, I guess.
Yeah. And a lot of these things have are dark in content as well. Like, with the Black Cauldron, for example. I mean, the whole story revolves around this cauldron that you throw corpses into it and it spits zombies back out. And
2 minutes into the movie,
and the movie basically opens up with the Horned King, walking down the steps to examine a room full of corpses.
Yeah.
So. And there's a sequence in there. It's like a little 1.5-minute thing where his little gremlin guy is directing in a trolley full of more corpses to get thrown in there. So, I mean, and you're absolutely right. We don't see a whole lot of really good dark fantasy anymore. I mean, if you're gonna find it, it's probably gonna be by like an indie film studio. Doesn't get a whole lot of marketing, or really any marketing for that matter.
We're not gonna see Secret of NIMH or Watership Down anytime soon.
No.
Yeah, Secret of NIMH, another one.
But everything has to be super
dark
colorful.
Fantasy movies have like corpses and skeletons and stuff. They can't market them internationally because like in Asia, they're very what's the word? They're very weird about skeletons and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it holds like more of a like what's the word? Not religious.
Spiritual.
Yeah, that'll work. So like specifically like the Chinese government has a big no on that because it's considered like spiritual. That's not the word I want, but it's similar. That's why like World of Warcraft, for instance, there's like a whole well, it doesn't exist anymore. They shut it down. But there was a Chinese server, and like all the there's a faction that's like zombies and stuff. They're all sewn up, so they just look like they're dead, but they don't. There's no viscera. So because it's just like, I don't know. So like a movie like this, like you said, 2 minutes in, we're seeing like zombies. Like granted, it's like a vision, but still. And this movie also does that weird thing, and I don't ever like it because it's 4 minutes in, you're like, here's the villain, and we're meeting him, but then we go on the quest. So very reminiscent of I was gonna write it down and now I forgot. But anyway, it was another story similar. But I thought it was kind of weird because it's just on a storyboarding perspective. Like it was like, here's the whole plot in the first 2 minutes of the movie, and then now movie happens, and then it just felt like we were introducing characters.
Yeah.
And then I was like, why are all the characters old men?
On that note, yeah, I mean the pacing of this movie is weird. It's really really weird. Now they barely make feature length. They barely make feature film length. Without the credits, this movie is like 118 minutes long. No, not an hour and 18 minutes long, not 118 minutes. Good God. And about an hour and 18 minutes long. And so, well, when the main character Taran is introduced as, the assistant pig keeper, I mean, that's what he's known as in the books, is Taran assistant pig keeper.
Yeah.
He has, these dreams of being a warrior and going off into battle. And, his pig gets spooked. She shows them a vision of the Horn King, and Dalbin, which is Taran's caretaker, or caregiver, I guess, says, okay, you have to take the pig out to this place to protect her from the Horn King. No hesitation whatsoever. Taran's just like, okay, bye. It's like, holy crap, let's talk about this a bit first.
Yeah, that was like super quick. On top of it, the way it started up, it was like really really slow, and then it was like drop right into the plot, because you were setting up all these cute little Disney animals, and then it was like, she sees the future. Well, you gotta leave.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, wow, that was quick.
Yeah, this movie is very tonally. The tones clash a lot. Because on the one hand, you have this, high fantasy, dark fantasy story. But on the other hand, you have the Disney animals who, laugh when Taran jumps into mud, or all have really cutesy facial expressions. It's like very, very Disney stuff. And you see
Crunchies
a lot
and munchies in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually his, Gurgi's actual personality in the books.
No, no, but still, it's very Disney.
Yeah, or you have the little gremlin who jumps around and says funny stuff, and even in the bad guys who are in the Horn King's castle, I mean, they're all very Disney goons too.
Yeah,
so,
they felt like the people in the tavern from Beauty and the Beast. Like literally, it was just like them in different hats.
Wait a minute. That means that the people in the tavern from Beauty and the Beast were actually the characters from the Black Cauldron, because Beauty and the Beast came next.
Oh yeah, that's true. Beauty and the Beast was from the 90s. Yeah, you're true. That's true. It's just like random background person.
Actually, they're all listed in the voice cast as henchmen.
That's funny. I mean, that makes more sense.
Yeah, and Taran, sets out on his journey, and Henwen the pig gets pignapped, and Taran goes after her, and the Horn King's castle is just right there.
Yeah,
it's like, you lived a mile away from this freaking castle.
Literally, and then he was like so surprised. He was like, the Horn King, like, yes, our neighbor down the road. The guy who lives in the creepy foreboding. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. That was another thing with the pacing. While I was watching it, I was like, he just left. He just left
like
the house
minutes ago.
Yeah, that wasn't even like, oh well, theater of mind, you have to pretend. Like, it was literally just, you just left the house. You still have the apple he gave you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, after that he runs in. Well, I can't remember if it was before or after that. Honestly, that the movie was kind of a blur to me.
So he immediately loses the pig 4 seconds in, and then he meets Gurgi.
Yep. And
then he's like, "Oh, apple! I'm gonna lie." And he was very Gollum, but like Gollum if he was like chaotic good.
And it's funny you say that though, because the type of voice put on for Gurgi is the same type of voice for Gollum. You kind of push your tongue down into your throat and start talking like this. But for some reason, the more he talked, the less I heard Gollum, and the more I heard the little duck from Tom and Jerry.
Oh my god!
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That's so funny. I hear it.
But Gurgi.
I didn't get that reference at all because the only thing I could think the entire time was he looks and sounds exactly like the Grummels from World of Warcraft. And they even say crunchies and munchies or something similar to that. So that's why I was like, this has to be referencing the Black Cauldron.
Oh god, yeah. Well, Gurgi in the books, he's all about crunchings and munchings, and he's all about his poor tender head. That's like, if you made a drinking game out of how many times he would say those two things in the books, you'd probably die before you finish the first book.
Oh, it's easy. They only need to pay the voice actor once, and he says the same line 10 times in the movie.
Yeah,
and then you're good. What was he, by the way? Like a little creature.
So even in the books, it's not fully described. It's not fully explained what he is. He's described as a human-like creature. Who is very hairy, kind of, slumped over. The books describe him almost like an upright monkey.
Okay. Huh.
But roughly human sized.
This one he looks like a oh god, now I can't even think of what that dog is. My parents have one. Looks like
the dog from
he looks like an Ewok without the head, without the hood.
Yeah
kind of like the quintessential small little hairy
Shih Tzu
thing.
He looks like a Shih Tzu walking upright.
Okay.
Gotcha. Yes,
that's what
I was thinking like the bigger fluffy dog, but yes, absolutely, a little Shih Tzu person with long arms. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. He was definitely funny. And it kind of brings it from the break of being so bleak and dark.
Yeah.
And then he'll just be like, here I am rhyming and dancing.
At least he didn't sing.
Yeah. There was no singing in this movie.
There was no singing in this movie, which I was honestly a little surprised at. I mean, I had known going into it that this wasn't, a Disney musical. But even then, between the animation, the goofy characters and whatnot, I was fully expecting at least one person to break into song. But and I mean, even when the bard is introduced, I don't think he sings it all in there either.
I don't think he does either. He argues with his harp a lot.
Yes,
the harp is like, no, listen, I was not paid for this performance.
Well, so the character of his name is Flute or Flam. In the books, he has an enchanted harp that breaks a string every time he exaggerates.
Yeah.
So as a bard, you sing your songs about the great doings of heroes and whatnot. Anytime he even embellishes even a little bit, that string breaks. So in the books, it's a very common thing for him to be doing maintenance on his harp.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was gonna talk, and then I was like, I don't remember the harp talking, and then it just kind of had its cute little moment in the dungeon when they first meet him, and then I think for the rest of the movie it was pretty much like, well, no, wait, later he did have a scene where he like shushed it. It just made him feel crazy.
Well, so Taran infiltrates the Horn King's castle, which is a huge. He doesn't even stop to consider it. He's just like, "Oh, big spooky castle. My pig's there. Let's go." It just goes with the pacing of like it's like as soon as an idea is presented, they just go for it. No contemplation, no inner monologue, no deciding whether or not it's actually a good idea. No, he just go, just do it. And so he gets in there, he gets captured by the Horn King, and so the Horn King asks him to have Henwen make a vision, and Taran's like, "No, I can't do that. I promise." And the Horn King is just like, "Okay, well then I guess you're no use to me." It's like, oh my god, like have a natural progression of events here. Like everybody just makes these decisions like way too quick.
You're talking about like right after they get out of the dungeon, yeah?
So no, but it's before they go to the dungeon. It's Taran the little gremlin dude.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm mixing up the next part. Okay, yeah, you're right. He's immediately like, I just met you. You're a piece of crap. You're not a real friend. And I'm like, brother. Yeah, okay, I remember. That was the part where I thought, I was like, this feels really Lord of the Rings, because the just replace the little castle with the Eye of Sauron, because that scene where
Or
they're standing on the
volcano.
mountain with Smeagol, like literally just well, obviously we're missing Sam, but it like frame for frame looked just like it. I was like, that's weird. I said, this is really weird. So I don't know. That felt weird. But yes, you're right. He was like, I guess you're not a real friend. But I guess it was like playing on the storyline. He was a coward the whole time.
Yeah,
Is he-
Gurgi is very much a coward. He runs away in the books pretty much every time something happens. I think he gets like one or two heroic acts, but those aren't until like later books. But Taran gets thrown in the dungeon, and this is where he meets Princess Eilonwy. And in the books, Eilonwy is very headstrong. She's very outspoken. She has a tendency of making odd metaphors. Like there's one there's one in particular that always stuck with me after reading the books. I forget what the actual conversation was, but Taran was giving her a hard time about something, and she said, if you don't listen, then that's the same as you putting your fingers in your ear and jumping in a well. You know, she has a lot of little, similes that she says there, and she makes a couple in this movie too. But it's strange that the more I listened to her talk, the more unnatural her voice sounded. I'm not sure if I was the only one who felt that way, but there's the way the actress read the lines was a little off to me.
It was almost like it was forced.
Yeah.
Like she thought she was playing a damsel in distress character, but it was at no point ever that.
Yeah.
Like she had very much like I don't know how long it's been since you've seen Sleeping Beauty, but she kind of had that cadence of like speaking up.
Yeah.
Like it was like, I'm a princess. So
yes.
Yeah, you're right. Because when I originally when I started watching it, I had it on 1.5 speed because I was trying to do something else too. So I was like, why is she so high pitched? So I slowed it back down, and I was like, oh, she's just like up there.
Just talks like that.
Like watching Snow White. Try watching Snow White sometime.
Well, as long as it's not the Rachel
She's way
Zegler
up
version.
That had to physically hurt. Speaking like that, like she had to have hours of talking like that, and then in reality, she's like, I just want to sound like this.
She's got lunch lady voice.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, but now that you said that, it did kind of feel weirdly forced. So I'm wondering, because like when voice actors apply for a job or get picked, they're given the little call sheet, and it kind of gives you like a description of the character and like this is how we want you to play it. So I'm wondering, I'm like really curious what the paper for Eilonwy said, because I don't know what she did versus how she talked. Even the scene like right after where they go through the whole thing, and she's like looking at him. He's like, I just robbed this grave. Here's this magic sword, and she's looking at him like, what the hell? But she never says anything. So I'm like, why was there no line there? And then afterwards they fight, and she's crying, and then she's like, I'm okay now. Like it was just really weird. I don't know. That felt weirdly rushed.
This whole movie is weirdly rushed. I feel like if they had, I mean, not that I'm saying this movie had to be 3.5 hours, Return of the King type of length, but I feel like there's a good maybe 15 minutes or so that is just on the cutting room floor of more interaction between the characters.
There has to be, because I'm looking at the file right now, and with part of the credits, it's a 1 hour 20 minutes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So the movie itself stops at he's dead. They're happy. So at 1:15:58 is where it zooms out to the scene of the pig keeper and the pig watching them go off into the sunset.
Mm-hmm.
So like, granted, yeah, The Little Mermaid was a box office hit and it was a 90-minute runtime, but that just seems like weirdly short. And there was a lot going on. And also now knowing that it's 2 books crammed together, that's a lot for 1 hour.
Yeah,
Like,
it really is. And they tried to inject a lot of the lore in there as well regarding like the fair folk, the 3 witches who possess the Black
the fairies.
Cauldron.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
that was a trip.
And in the books, so King Idaleg wasn't a fairy; he was a dwarf. So,
Okay.
and
What? You mean he didn't look like Santa Claus?
No,
He
well,
looked
he
exactly
looked
like
like he looked like a dwarf
Yeah, yeah.
Santa Claus.
He was wearing red and white red cloak with white trim and a big white beard. He was Santa Claus.
Did they say he was a fairy? Because wasn't he not flying?
I don't recall.
Oh, no, he has wings.
Yeah, he does have wings. I don't recall him flying.
Yeah, he was walking around the whole time.
Yeah.
But yes, very Santa Claus. He was like if Papa Smurf and Santa Claus had a love child.
That
And
is
also
not
ate a
something
light
I wanted
bulb.
to imagine tonight. Not quite on the bingo card, but you know.
But also, why were the fairies so bright? That was so weird. And they never explained it. And then I thought that little orb that she had with her was a fairy, but then they meet fairies. So now I'm like, what's the orb?
So I forget what it actually is in the books, but it's something she calls her bauble, which she just kind of carries around for light, and it does a couple of other things. But it's revealed. I forget. I think it's in the 3rd book that her bauble is like a crazy, powerful, magical object that can change the world, basically.
And she's just using it as a nightlight. That's wild.
Basically,
a sexy
yeah.
Nightlight at that.
Yeah.
it gave very much like, you remember Troll in Central Park?
Oh, long time ago.
She gave me very much vibes of that. This all has to be animated by the same place, because I while watching this, I thought of like so many other movies.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it did remind me of a lot of other movies too, specifically in the animation, because you can tell that they did a lot of rotoscoping, and sometimes it looked very off. Like in the beginning of the movie with Dalbin, and he's talking to Taran. His dialogue and the way his lines were delivered did not mesh with the way he was animated at all. It was very contrasting, and I'm watching him. I'm like, oh god, if I was watching this on mute, it would look a lot better. But with the voice associated with the way he's animated, it was very strange.
Oh, see, I didn't even really notice that. But I thought you were going to say the part where he goes out to feed the pig, because it feels like the house went from sitting still to like part of it was moving this way and then part of it was like this way. As it was happening, I was like, oh my god, because I haven't noticed that in one eye. So I was like, is that me? So I was like covering my eye. I was like, oh no, that's just. So I think that
am I having a
in my mind they had like 3 lenses at least. And then I think one was sliding to the left and one was being zoomed out, and it made like a weird wonky effect. That's the only thing I can think of, because that's like, they didn't have really computer animation yet. So there's no way that was like some messed up CGI. That was like fully just a weird choice of how they were moving the lenses. But yeah, but I'll have to look at the way he was animated. But he was really like dancing all over. And for some reason, while I was watching this, I kept thinking this was the movie with the crazy old purple lady. But that was
Sword in the Stone.
Yes, that was Sword in the Stone.
Sword in the Stone.
And so referencing it again, his animation was like super similar to her animation from Sword in the Stone. It was almost like I wanted to put them side by side, but I don't have that file on my computer, so I wasn't able to do that.
Well, I mean, if you take Tauren and dye his hair blonde, he's basically King Arthur now.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking this movie was a reference to, was Sword in the Stone.
Yeah, and there are a lot of inspirations within the Chronicles of PRYDAIN that came from Arthurian folktales, specifically with the sword that Tauren finds. So he doesn't get. I don't think he gets the sword back in the movie after he gives it to the witches. But the sword is called Dernwin, and it's an enchanted sword that was held by the previous High King of the land. And Taran gets it, and that's his sword throughout the series. No, that's not his sword throughout the series. The sword belongs to Gwydion, who is a character who's introduced in the Book of Three, but not in here. Gwydion's like the Aragorn of the book series.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. There's a lot that's
but
there's
it's
a lot
easy
that's
to
there
draw
and
a
a lot that's
parallel
not.
knowing now that the book was Welsh because a lot of the Mort to Arthur is Welsh mythology as well.
Yep.
So like all we're missing is the Lady in the Lake. And we got the lake, there's just no lady in it.
Yeah,
There's fair folk in there.
Yeah,
that's a good replacement for it. Or if you want to stretch it even further, we got the three witches. We could call them ladies in the lake.
that's true. They could be our ladies in the lake. They were really chaotic, and I loved how the one was like really, really loving that bard. She's like, "I'm a huge fan."
she was straight up forcing herself on him. And
hashtag me too.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Whatever. What's the hashtag that's out there now? The Me Too movement. Yeah.
I don't know if there's a new hashtag for that now yet.
But, just give it a minute.
Yeah,
but,
right.
Yeah, that was very funny because it was like up until then I was like, why are all the characters old men? And then I was like, oh, women. Well, I guess the fairies. There was some not old men fairies too.
The first fairies that we saw were all voiced by children. So I think that they might have actually been, children in the movie. But the few women that we do see in the movie are either witches or prostitutes. Because in the Horn King's castle, we see the one woman who's there who's dancing for the men. And
whatnot. The
dancer.
That's another man.
I mean, but very very clearly a prostitute. But and if you look at her, she is animated so much brighter than all the rest of them. I mean, she sticks out like a sore thumb. It's like the animators wanted us to know, hey, this lady's fun. Let's make her really bright.
Yeah, she had to be the fun one.
Yeah. But Taran finds the witches who are in possession of the Black Cauldron, and they don't give it to him freely. He has to exchange the sword that he found, which is Dernwin, for the Black Cauldron. And when he gets it, he realizes, oh well, shit, I can't do anything with it. And the witches tell him, well, we said we gave it to you. We didn't say you could use it.
Yeah, that was.
It's the genie in the lamp fiasco. I'll grant your wish, but you better be darn specific about how you want to use that wish.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I'm just going to make it play to my favor, kind of thing.
Also, I thought it was really weird. Later, they came back and they're like, "We're just going to take this from you." I'm like, "That's not really how a deal works." Like,
well, that's why you've got the bard guy there. He's saying, no. We make deals here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was kind of the balance for everybody, which I mean so this movie unfortunately suffers from I'm gonna start calling it the Krull effect, where you have characters who are introduced. Who are they? We don't know. Why are they there? We don't know. What's their backstory?
We don't know. Yeah.
And
Krull very much had a character of the week vibe, except the week just kept going and going and going. Because it was like, now we have this guy, and now we have the lady who I've known my whole life, and she's a spider, but she's not a spider. And then we have the magic horses, and then we have I was waiting for it was not necessarily a MacGuffin, but like every few minutes it was like, here's another person.
Here's
it was
the Cyclops.
It was like while we were writing the story, we have all these plot holes, and we were just, here's another character we can throw into it. So that was the Cyclops that was there and he knew he was gonna die, and then they didn't really do anything with that, and then they were like, oh, he's got to stay here, and then he was like, no, never mind, I'm coming with you.
Yeah.
So that
And
was
that was something that detracted a whole lot from my experience watching the movie, you know, in general. It's just the fact that there's nothing to the characters. There is absolutely nothing to the characters. I mean, the only one who they have personalities. I mean, sure. But Taran is the only one who actually has something specific for us to root for, which is he wants to be a warrior.
right.
Which,
like, we don't even really know anything about Princess Elanwe, and out of
Nope.
all the characters, she had the most backstory outside of Terran. So, but
Yeah.
this is the problem when you have such a small amount of time and so many characters you're trying to introduce. There's not enough time to introduce them. So
Yeah.
you gotta. So if he had, like I just said earlier, it just felt like there was so many old man characters. If we had like cut all of them, put them all into the Bard, and given him all these roles, and like removed the whole fairy scene, that would have been like way more character growth and development, and then us as the viewers would have felt more like, oh, because the only character development we get is like Gurgi goes from being like and it's like slamming you in the face with it, like, he's a coward, look at him being a coward, and at the end he like is like, oh, I'm not now.
And
So like that's pretty much
the Cauldron.
Yeah.
I'll be the hero of the day.
And we already knew it was going to happen because it very, very heavy foreshadowing throughout the whole movie, and then at the end you're like, oh, now we're all friends again, and it was like, yay.
It reminded me. So I don't know if you guys ever watched the Nostalgia Critic on YouTube. I've watched him for years. I think he's hilarious. He was actually one of the first people who got me to look at film critically. But he did a Catwoman review of Catwoman starring Halle Berry. You know, awful movie. But one of the sequences he does in there is, you know, Catwoman goes over to the apartment of someone who's playing super loud music, and he won't turn it down. And then she gets her Catwoman powers, and she goes over to the apartment of the guy who's playing loud music, and she beats the crap out of him. And he's like, yeah, the opposite of what we saw before. The opposite of what we saw before. And I was like, well, that's it. That's what we got here, because Gurgi, oh, coward, he runs away. You know, I don't like him. He's not my friend. And then he sacrifices himself. It's like, oh yeah, the opposite of what we saw before. I don't know. I had fun watching this movie, but there's really nothing about it that stuck with me besides, oh, this is kind of dark for a kids movie.
Yeah, it wasn't like a bad movie. It was just like, I can understand why it wasn't like a box office hit. It was okay, but like, I agree. The whole time I'm like, this is a kids movie. Like, it was a lot of stuff happening. I was like, I don't know. And like, granted, at the same time, it wasn't done in like this grotesquely distasteful way. Shoot, I think Willow had scenes that were scarier than that.
Yeah.
So
but
towards the end, we do kind of get the climax of like, wow, that guy's getting his flesh ripped off. That's a lot.
Yeah.
that was probably the only part where I was really like, ooh, I don't know. But the whole rest of it, yeah, it was just like, I don't even feel like as a viewer there was a moment for us to stop and breathe. It was just like, here's the next person.
Yeah.
And it's easy to fall into that, I guess, because like you're like trying to push the plot forward, but pacing is super important, especially when it comes to animated. Because like what you were saying in the beginning where he's talking and it just didn't really match up. If you look, a lot of times when they're moving around and stuff, it seems like really, I don't, not robotic, but like kind of off, like Uncanny Valley kind of.
Yeah.
Like any of the scenes where they're turning or like looking away. Shoot, even the end where they're walking away, who walks like that? Like very like Scarecrow and friends on the Yellow Brick Road. I was like, this don't even look right. So I didn't really notice it until the second time I just watched it right now. And then when I was trying to see the runtime, and then as it was playing, I was like, that is kind of weird.
Yeah, and the animation's not bad, but I mean, I don't know if it was rushed or what, but like there were probably at least a dozen scenes where you could see the masking around the character against the background. Now,
Yep.
and I don't know if that is just something that became more apparent with the transition into high definition, but I mean, my brain would make note of it every time I saw it. It's just one of those things where it's like, it's like when you can see that it's there, that's all you see.
A lot of times they're literally pieces of plastic or paper cut out, so it feels like they just weren't. I don't know, but you might be right. It might just be because of the HD effect, because the background, they're beautifully painted, but they're definitely not high def.
Right.
So whatever millimeter lens they were using, it just that didn't the foreground, you can tell the definition difference. But yeah, there were a lot of times where I was like, oh, there's a weird white halo around the character.
Oh
It's a
well.
lot noticeable in a movie like this as well, because every background was dark blues, purples, blacks.
Mm-hmm.
So up until the very end.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, that they didn't. Now that I'm thinking back on it, there really wasn't a whole lot of color to this movie, except whenever they were like in, like a well lit field or something. Like no, when Taran's tending to his pig on the farm, that was fairly colorful.
Yeah.
After they initially escaped the Horn King's castle, and they're out in the field by that lake. Yeah, that was a fairly bright scene, but everything else, it was very, like you said, a very limited color palette.
Yeah. And I think that it was like it was a fun bookend to be like colorful and then dark, 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 and then the end colorful again. But there were points where it's like your eyes need something to focus on, and if it's only the neon red outfit of the character, you're like, okay, I'm looking at this a long time. But that's why the only part that I will say is a positive for the scene with the Fae folk was that it did add a lot of color, but still it was on a really dark background. But them being colorful, it was like a little bit refreshing, because before that, I think that's probably why, like in the beginning, the lady we saw was so bright, because they were trying to be like, oh, hey, everything's really dark, maybe we should add some color, but it was just like too much, because she was like glowing, she was so bright.
Yeah.
And then yeah, I don't know, they probably could have. I would love to see the apparatus they used for the layers, because I know if that was filmed in what, 85, you said, Dave?
80,
Maybe 84.
Let's see.
It came out in 85. I don't
It
know.
came out in 85, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it was all put together and filmed in 82 or 83.
Okay.
Because I seem to remember somewhere seeing that Grant Bardsley, who voiced Taran, was like 14 at the time that he recorded all of his voice work, but he was like 17 when the movie actually came out.
Oh,
So,
okay. So there
Gotcha.
was a big gap. Oh, well, I guess that's pretty common with animation. But so that techno whatever it's called that Disney owns, Buena Vista technically at the time, it wouldn't even have been invented yet. So they were probably still only using like a couple of cells per frame. So I wonder if that's why a lot of the color choices were like they were, because they only probably had one flat background per scene. I don't know. I'm just guessing, because I don't know, but I know that it was kind of revolutionary when later, like in the Little Mermaid, where they had the scene where part of the background was zooming out, and then the foreground, and then there was like a midground, because there's
Yeah.
like with the waves. That was like revolutionary, because people were like, "Oh my god, there's so many things happening," because they had like literally like 8 lenses on top of each other, and they were zooming out at different times. So this movie would have definitely benefited from being reanimated.
I've got one other. Actually, I've got 2 other bits of trivia here. One, this one will get all. You've got all the emo kids and the goth kids that are out there thinking, "Oh, I kind of want to watch this, but not really." But this will get them in. Uh, uh, One of the conceptual artists was Tim Burton. So
Is that right?
yeah, Tim Burton did the conceptual art for this. He was uncredited,
Nice.
but he did do the conceptual art. And then, as far as the high fantasy goes, we had the narration at the front that was done by John Huston, who also voiced Gandalf in the Rankin Bass Hobbit movies.
Oh,
okay.
yeah, he did
And
sound
then-
familiar. I also
and-
forgot we had a narrator for a minute.
Yeah, because he was just there at the first. He had like 2 lines, and then John Hurt voiced the Horned King, and
Mhm.
John Hurt also voiced Aragorn in the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings back in 74, 75, somewhere back in that neighborhood. The
Yeah.
rotoscoped ones. So
Huh.
again, another Lord of the Rings tie-in. So there you go, Lord of the Rings nerds. You can watch this and feel good about yourselves, and you goth kids, y'all are good too.
That's
It's a movie.
cool that Tim
It's a
Burton
movie for
did-
everybody.
That's cool that Tim Burton did the concept art. It's weird that he was like uncredited because Disney loves him. They're like, oh yeah.
Well,
more
this
stuff
was
from
again.
you."
This is early Tim Burton, so he's not known at this point.
Oh,
I would
true,
love to see the
true.
concept art for this movie.
If you get, I've heard that if you get the, and I may actually have it. I have to go look, but if you get the 2000 release on DVD, I think that's one of the special features is some of the concept art.
Oh, I bet it's cool too because Tim Burton's drawings and sketches and stuff. I don't know if there's still a lot of them are still on his website. His sketches are wild. They are so different than his final products. So that's pretty cool. I bet it was really neat to see too.
What you got there?
I've got my Horned King Funko Pop.
Aw.
It's the Horned King.
It,
But I've also
it
got-
is?
I've also got Terran to go with it.
What the heck? When did those release?
I don't know. I found them at a not a thrift store, like a junk store. It was $10 for the pair. So I was like, oh, I don't know.
those are legit, like from the Black Cauldron?
I'll have to go find my box, but yeah,
Holy shit.
that's what I said.
That's awesome.
That
I was
is
like,
awesome.
you don't ever see merchandise from Black Cauldron. I was like, I gotta have
No,
this.
they literally didn't do like any merch, so that's crazy. But you know, Disney's kind of notorious for that. They have like their omnipresent vault,
Yeah.
and then every once in a while they're like, it's this anniversary, and I'm like, how many diamond anniversaries is the Cinderella movie? Now?
So
Like, come on now.
This was a summer 2019 summer convention limited edition exclusive. Terran and the Horned King from the Black Cauldron.
That's wild. That's
That's
awesome, dude.
And I got it for $10 for both of them. So
That's awesome. What the heck?
worth it.
That is worth it.
Nice.
Also, how
care
perfect.
I don't care if they're
Dang
worth
it,
anything or not, but
That's so funny. I remember how earlier I was saying how Alonway felt very much like Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah.
So apparently they based her on Sleeping Beauty. Like
Well, there you
so I was wondering because I was curious about the books too, so I looked it up while we were talking. And I guess in the books she's a ginger, so they made her blonde for what, no reason?
no, because gingers have no souls.
Oh, valid.
She has her bauble. That's the personification of her soul.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So essentially, the whole department was like, "This needs to feel like Sleeping Beauty," because this says they discarded visual character artwork submitted by Tim Burton, and along with Rich and Berman, they desired a Sleeping Beauty styled visual approach. Both directors brought Milt Kahl out of retirement, so he's if you don't know who he is, he worked on like Mickey's Circus and The Ugly Duckling and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Bambi. I don't know, pretty much all the old, what would you call it, like the Silver Age or Golden Age of Disney.
Yeah.
He worked on all of them, so they fully brought this man out of retirement to make this movie.
And you know, a lot of the animation too, and I don't know the timeline. I'd have to go look at this. It was very reminiscent of Don Bluth style animation.
Yes.
That's what I kept thinking. And I
Yeah.
keep looking at the thing and I keep expecting to see it. His name's not on the list. He's not anywhere. He's not an artist. He's not listed anywhere on the stuff. But it is very
Bluethy.
yeah, just the animation style. So
well, we have just about hit an hour here. So, any final thoughts about this movie? And anybody have any parting words or anything that we didn't cover?
still love it. It's a once a year view for me, just because. And like I said, I've got the Funko Pops, so this has been one of my favorites since it released back in 80 whatever.
You know, I agree. I haven't watched it in years, but I mean, it's not a bad movie. It was fun to like kind of tear it apart like we did today. But now that he's mentioned it, yeah, I wish Don Bluth would have been part of it.
I will say that if Don Bluth had been on that animation team, it would have been a hell of a lot darker. Because I mean, Don Bluth, I mean, Secret of Nim, Titan AE, American Tail, Anastasia. I mean, this guy, he makes kids movies for kids who want to get spooked.
Yeah, pretty much every movie we compared this movie to was a Don Bluth animation or filmography credit. Like shit, the Troll in Central Park, even he worked on that. So it was like it felt like maybe they were almost trying to pay homage to him.
Yeah.
Oh wait, here I'll add another one. I didn't see a Troll in Central Park, but I saw We're Back, a dinosaur story.
Yeah.
There you go. Now we've mentioned another one, just because. Just so we can say we did it.
You know, that's one I actually never saw.
Oh.
What, We're Back?
Yeah, I never saw it.
Oh, that movie's so cute. That's a good one. Add it to the list.
I saw a lot of animated movies that came out around that time. I mean, I saw All Dogs Go to Heaven. I saw Balto. I saw Ferngully. I never saw We're Back.
Wow.
I guess I just missed that train.
That was a favorite as a kid. I had granted we were kind of a Disney household, but I was more like watching Anastasia pretty much 100 times a day.
Yeah.
Or like Winnie the Pooh. Well, that was Disney. So I'm trying to think of the not Disney ones now. Anastasia, I said. Troll in Central Park was really good. We're Back was one I watched a lot. Yeah, basically that whole, what was that studio called?
That was I think that was Warner Brothers.
Yeah, they had like a really good, I don't know, like couple years of like really good not Disney movies.
Yeah.
And I think they were better than a lot of Disney movies at the time.
Anastasia especially, I think that was really good. You know,
good
old John Cusack and Meg Ryan.
And for being a historical fantasy, that was good. It was really good. And the music slaps.
It does. It does. All right. Anybody have any shameless plugs that they'd like to inject here? Dave?
Tomorrow night on MCU Mondays, we're talking about the episode, I think it's 10 of Daredevil, the Netflix series, season 3, episode 10. We're almost done with it. We got 3 episodes left. Then on Thursday on Cantina Happy Hour, we're talking about Clone Wars, but not the Clone Wars. We're talking about
the micro series.
Yeah, what's the guy's name?
Samurai
Jack.
Genndy Tartakovsky.
The Tartakovsky Clone Wars.
Good stuff. I've got them, but I've got both seasons on DVD. I'll have to pop those in.
They're actually on Disney Plus. I was shocked.
I mean, I like Disney Plus, but whenever I stream, everything's a little bit darker. And that's, I mean, I can't, I don't know how to get around that. And when I can't see it as well as I normally would, it kind of takes away from the experience. So for this one, I'll definitely watch the DVDs.
So that's my plans for the week.
Woo! How about you, Cody?
No, nothing here.
No?
But tomorrow on MCU Mondays, we're watching Daredevil.
Okay. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Cam and Focus Weekly. Thank you to everybody who joined and checked us out. Next week, we'll be back again for another episode next Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so this episode coming up isn't going to be for a film of the week. It's going to be discussing a topic about film in general. I haven't quite decided yet what that topic will be. I have ideas that I dropped a few in the group chat the other day. I don't know if any sounded appealing to you guys, but I'll touch back with you. I'll touch base with you guys again here soon. But that'll be next week at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard, and you can also see me again this coming Thursday for the Cantina Happy Hour for Feast of Fandoms. We're gonna have a lot of fun discussing Star Wars. We always have a lot of fun discussing Star Wars. Sometimes we agree on everything, sometimes we don't, but that's what makes these conversations fun.
All right.
Just like how we haven't gotten Dave to admit yet that adding Hayden Christensen at the end of Return of the Jedi was a good idea.
Never. And you never will. You never will.
Oh, no.
That's just as bad as putting nips on the bat suit.
Oh God.
Oh, no.
George Clooney. Well, they also did that, not quite to the extent, but they also did it in Batman Forever with Val Kilmer.
Yeah. It's Joel Schumacher. We'll blame Joel Schumacher for that.
We will blame Joel Schumacher. I think Joel Schumacher blames Joel Schumacher. All right. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we will see you next week.